She sat at the small, worn-out piano in the corner of her living room, her fingers trembling slightly as they hovered over the keys. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on the faded wood of the piano. She had always loved music, ever since she was little, and this piano had been a gift from her mother when she was just 6 years old. It was her most treasured possession, not because it was expensive or fancy, but because it carried memories of her mother's laughter and gentle encouragement. Today was different, though. Today she had a simple wish. She wanted to play a piece perfectly, one that her mother had loved. She wanted to feel close to her again, to hear the notes and imagine her mother smiling at her. She knew it wouldn't be easy. The piece was long and difficult, filled with fast runs and soft, delicate moments. But she had promised herself she would try. At school, she had told a few classmates about her plan to play the piece. Almost immediately, they had laughed. "Why do you even want to do that?" one of them had said, smirking. "No one is going to care if you play a song on the piano." Another had added, "You're never going to be that good. Just forget it." Their words stung, but she didn't show it. She nodded politely, tucked her music sheet under her arm, and went to the library to practice quietly. She found a small corner where no one could disturb her and opened her music book. The notes seemed to dance on the page, but when she tried to play, her fingers fumbled. She sighed and started again. Slowly, carefully, she went through each section, her mind focused entirely on the music. Sometimes, she would pause, close her eyes, and imagine her mother sitting beside her, smiling and clapping softly as she played. That thought gave her courage. Her practice continued for hours. She would make mistakes, get frustrated, and sometimes even cry a little, but she never gave up. Every wrong note was a challenge to try again, to get closer to the perfection she wanted. At times, she felt completely alone, as if the world didn't understand how important this was to her. Yet that feeling didn't stop her, pushed her to work harder. Her father often watched from the doorway, his heart swelling with quiet pride. He knew how much this meant to her. He remembered her mother's gentle voice encouraging her to follow her heart, to never be afraid to dream. Now he tried to be that voice for her, offering small words of support. "You're doing great," he would say, or, "Just keep going, I know you can do it." But mostly, he let her be, knowing that this journey was hers alone. The mockery at school still lingered in her mind. Every time someone laughed or whispered about her, it was like a small weight pressing down on her chest. But she tried to turn those feelings into determination. She reminded herself why she was doing this. It wasn't for the classmates or anyone else. It was for her mother, for the connection they had shared, and for the pride she wanted to feel in her own heart. She would often sit by the window in the evenings, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange, her fingers still dancing on the piano keys. The music became a bridge between her past and her present, a way to speak to her mother even though she was no longer there. Sometimes, the notes would come out wrong, clumsy, and shaky, but other times, they were perfect, carrying a sweetness that made her heart ache with longing. Her friends at school didn't understand. They thought music was just a hobby, something to pass the time. But for her, it was a lifeline. It was a way to remember the warmth of her mother's hugs, the way she had always encouraged her to try, to keep going no matter what. Each day, she poured herself into the music, not caring about the laughter or the whispers. She knew that this wish, simple as it seemed, was the most important thing she could do. There were moments when doubt crept in. She would wonder if she could ever play the piece perfectly, if she could ever reach the level of skill her mother had always believed she could achieve. The fear of failure was strong, but she faced it head-on. She reminded herself that every mistake was just part of the journey, that every wrong note was a step closer to the music she wanted to create. Sometimes, she would hum softly to herself, matching her voice to the keys, letting the melody fill the room. She imagined her mother's voice joining in, harmonizing with her own. That image, more than anything, kept her going. It gave her a sense of purpose, a reason to keep practicing even when her hands ached and her mind felt tired. Her piano lessons were another place where she showed her determination. The teacher noticed her dedication, the way she practiced even outside of lessons, the care she took with every note. Sometimes the teacher would say, "You have a real gift, and you work hard. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Those words were like sunshine breaking through a cloudy sky. They gave her hope that maybe, just maybe, she could achieve what she wanted. Every night, before going to bed, she would sit at the piano one last time. The house was quiet, the world outside asleep. She would play a few notes, let the music flow, and imagine her mother listening. The connection she felt during those moments was almost magical. It was as if, through the music, her mother was right there with her, whispering encouragement and love. Even though the teasing at school never fully stopped, it became less important to her. She realized that their words could not touch the joy she felt when playing the piano. The music was hers and hers alone. It was a gift she had inherited from her mother, and she would cherish it always. Her simple wish to play a piece perfectly was more than just a desire to perform well. It was a way to honor her mother, to keep her memory alive, and to prove to herself that she could overcome doubt and fear. Every day, every hour spent at the piano, brought her closer to that wish. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she also knew that the love she felt for her mother and the music would guide her. In that small living room, with sunlight streaming in and the old piano keys under her fingers, she felt a sense of peace. She was ready to face the challenges, to ignore the mockery, and to keep working toward her simple wish. Because in her heart, she knew that one day, when she finally played the piece perfectly, it would be a moment of true connection, pride, and love that no one could take away. Every morning, she woke early, the soft light of dawn spilling into her room, and made her way to the piano. The house was quiet, almost as if it was giving her the space she needed. She had promised herself that today would be different, that she would play without thinking about mistakes or the words of others. She sat on the old wooden bench, her fingers brushing over the keys, feeling the familiar coolness beneath her skin. Her hands trembled as she began to play, repeating the first few notes over and over, trying to make them perfect. Each time she stumbled, she sighed and started again. Sometimes she would stop and rest her head on her arms, frustrated by the mistakes that seemed to come so easily. But in those moments, she thought of her mother, of the way her voice had once encouraged her to keep going no matter what. That memory lifted her spirits and gave her strength. The afternoons were the hardest. When she walked through the school hallways, the whispers followed her. Some students would glance at her and chuckle, others would outright mock her. "Still practicing that old piano song?" they would ask, with smirks on their faces. She would smile faintly, nod, and keep walking. Inside, she felt a mix of sadness and determination. Their words could not stop her, though they hurt. She had learned to turn that pain into energy, pushing herself harder when she returned home. At home, she found comfort in the small rituals she had created. She would open her music book, her fingers tracing the notes as if they could memorize them by touch alone. Then she would play slowly, carefully, sometimes stopping to analyze the parts she found difficult. She kept a notebook where she wrote little reminders for herself. Breathe through the fast sections. Feel the melody. Remember why you were playing. It was her personal guide, a reflection of her commitment and love for the music. Her father often watched from the doorway, a gentle smile on his face. He admired her persistence, the way she poured her heart into something that mattered so deeply to her. Sometimes he would leave small notes for her on the piano, words of encouragement, or reminders to take breaks. Even though he could not replace her mother, he tried to support her in the ways he could, giving her the space to grow while quietly cheering her on. Some evenings, she would walk to the small park nearby, sitting on a bench with her music sheets balanced on her knees. She would hum softly, practicing the melody aloud, letting the sounds mix with the gentle rustling of leaves. These moments were peaceful, a contrast to the bustling and often cruel environment of school. Here, she felt free to make mistakes and to explore the music in her own way, without judgment. Her piano teacher noticed the improvement in her technique. During lessons, the teacher would smile, nodding as she played, and offered gentle advice. "You are making progress," the teacher said one day. "Remember, music is not just about hitting the right notes. It's about telling a story with your heart." Those words resonated deeply with her. She realized that her mother had always believed in the emotional power of music, and now, her teacher was guiding her to discover it herself. There were nights when exhaustion threatened to take over. Her eyes would ache from studying the notes. Her fingers would throb from repeated practice. Yet, she would sit at the piano one last time before bed, playing the section that troubled her the most. She imagined her mother listening, imagining her voice guiding her through the difficult parts, praising her persistence. That thought gave her a sense of comfort, a feeling that she was not alone in this journey. The challenges were not just musical. Sometimes, she doubted herself, wondering if she would ever be able to play the piece as she imagined it. Other times, she felt overwhelmed by the constant teasing at school, by the feeling that no one truly understood her dedication. But each time, she returned to the piano, letting her love for music outweigh the fear and doubt. Every practice session became a small victory, a step forward, no matter how minor it seemed. She started noticing small improvements. The fast sections she had struggled with began to flow more smoothly, her fingers moving with greater confidence. The delicate, soft parts gained more expression, capturing the emotions she wanted to convey. Each day, she felt closer to the connection she longed for with her mother, each note carrying a piece of that love. The neighborhood also started to notice her dedication. Sometimes, neighbors passing by would hear the faint sound of piano music drifting from the house. One elderly neighbor even stopped and asked if she was practicing for a performance. She nodded quietly, feeling a mix of pride and nervousness. Even small acknowledgement from strangers gave her a boost, reinforcing that her hard work was meaningful, even if only she fully understood its depth. Her friendships were few, as much of her time was spent practicing, but the ones she had were strong. A couple of classmates who were genuinely kind would occasionally ask her about the music, showing interest without mockery. Their small encouragements were precious, a reminder that not everyone was cruel, and that some people could see the beauty in dedication and passion. The weekends were her favorite. With no school, she could dedicate hours to practicing uninterrupted. She would start early in the morning, playing until her hands ached, then take short breaks, returning again and again. The piece became more than notes on a page. It became a story she was telling, a message she wanted to share with the world and with her mother. Each day brought new challenges, new mistakes, but also new moments of triumph. Even her dreams at night were filled with music. She would dream of performing in front of an audience, her fingers flying over the keys, and seeing her mother smiling in the front row. Sometimes, she would wake up humming a melody she had discovered in her sleep, quickly scribbling it down to remember it. The music was no longer just practice. It was part of her life, woven into her thoughts and feelings, shaping who she was becoming. She also learned patience through this process. She understood that mastery did not come overnight and that persistence was more important than perfection. When frustration arose, she took a deep breath, reminded herself of her goal, and continued. Slowly, steadily, she felt herself improving, step by step, day by day. Her simple wish, which had once seemed so small to others, grew into a journey of growth, resilience, and self-discovery. It was not about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about honoring her mother, embracing her own passion, and finding strength in her determination. Every mistake, every moment of doubt, every long hour at the piano contributed to the person she was becoming. Someone brave, patient, and deeply connected to her music. Even as the weeks went by, she kept the teasing in the back of her mind, but it no longer held power over her. She had learned to focus on what mattered, on what truly brought her joy and fulfillment. Each note she played was a step closer to her dream, a step closer to feeling that her mother was with her, proud of her courage and dedication. And so, she continued, day after day, hour after hour, filling the quiet house with music, letting it guide her through struggles, disappointment, and doubt. She knew the path ahead would not be easy, But she had learned that hard work, love, and persistence could carry her further than mockery or fear ever could. Her simple wish had grown into a journey of the heart, and she was ready to see it through, no matter how long it took. The announcement came on a crisp Monday morning at school. A local music competition was being held, inviting students from all nearby schools to participate. The details were simple. Each participant would perform a solo piece on stage, with judges who understood music and the chance to be recognized for their talent. When she first heard about it, a mix of excitement and fear swirled in her chest. The idea of performing in front of strangers was terrifying, but the thought of honoring her mother through this performance made her heart race with determination. For the next few days, she could think of nothing else. She carried the sheet music with her wherever she went, reading the notes during breaks, humming the melody under her breath while walking to class, and mentally imagining herself on stage. She knew that this was more than just an opportunity to play. It was a chance to show herself what she could do, to see if all her practice and dedication could come together in a moment of true expression. At school, the teasing continued. Some students were quick to point out that she would never win, that she shouldn't even bother trying. Yet, she felt a calm resolve settle in her. Their words no longer held the power to shake her confidence. She had spent months practicing, overcoming mistakes, and learning patience. She knew her journey was hers alone, and the competition was a way to share her music, not to prove them wrong. Her afternoons were filled with long practice sessions. She created a schedule, dedicating specific hours to the fast and tricky sections of the piece and other hours to the soft, emotional parts. Each practice began with slow, careful repetition. If she hit a wrong note, she would pause, take a deep breath and start again, refusing to rush. Her father often watched quietly from the doorway, nodding with pride, occasionally offering gentle advice or a comforting smile. Even though he could not replace her mother, he became her quiet supporter, always present, always encouraging. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she sat at the piano, staring at the notes she had played countless times. Doubts crept in. What if she froze on stage? What if her fingers slipped? The fear of failure felt heavy in her chest. But then, she imagined her mother sitting beside her, her warm smile, her gentle voice telling her to believe in herself. That image strengthened her. She reminded herself that mistakes did not define her. Dedication and heart did. She began to rehearse in front of an imaginary audience. Each night, she would sit at the piano, pretend there were people watching, and play as though she were on a stage. Sometimes she would imagine the applause at the end, the feeling of satisfaction washing over her. These imaginary performances gave her confidence, a sense that she could face the real audience with courage. Her teacher noticed a change in her during lessons. She played with more expression, her fingers moving with confidence, her face reflecting the emotion of the music. The teacher smiled and said, "You are ready. Trust yourself and the music. Let it speak through you." Those words resonated deeply. She realized that this competition was not just about winning or losing. It was about sharing a part of herself, a piece of her heart that connected her to her mother. The day of the competition arrived. The room was filled with students, teachers, and parents, all waiting for their turn or cheering from the audience. Her stomach felt heavy with nerves as she waited backstage. The bright lights, the chatter, and the sound of other pianos playing made her heart race. She held her sheet music tightly, closed her eyes, and took several deep breaths. She whispered softly to herself, "I am ready. I can do this. This is for my mom." When her name was called, she walked onto the stage, her hands still trembling slightly. The bright lights shone down, and she could see the audience in soft blur. She approached the piano and sat down on the bench, adjusting her posture and placing her fingers on the keys. The room fell silent, and in that quiet, she felt the presence of her mother, guiding her, reassuring her. She took a deep breath and pressed the first key. At first, the notes were careful and deliberate. Her fingers moved slowly, remembering every lesson, every practice, every struggle she had endured. The fast sections came next, and although her hands shook slightly, She focused on the music itself rather than the fear. She let the melody flow through her, feeling each note in her heart, imagining her mother listening and smiling. The music began to breathe life into her, carrying her confidence forward. As the piece progressed, the audience seemed to disappear. All that mattered was the piano, the melody, and the connection she felt to her mother. Her emotions poured into every note, soft and delicate at times, strong and expressive at others. She felt a sense of liberation, a feeling that she was sharing not just music, but her heart with everyone listening. She reached the final section, the notes soaring and then falling gently, the culmination of months of dedication and practice. Her fingers moved with grace. Every mistake she had feared no longer mattered. In that moment, there was only music and love. When the last note resonated and faded into silence, she lifted her hands from the keys, her heart pounding, her eyes glistening with tears. The room remained still for a brief moment, as if everyone was holding their breath, before applause erupted, loud and genuine. The judges smiled, some nodding in appreciation, others whispering compliments. She felt a wave of relief and joy, a feeling that she had accomplished something far greater than winning. She had connected with the music, honored her mother, and shown herself the strength she carried within. Her classmates who had once mocked her were silent, their expressions a mix of surprise and admiration. Backstage, her father hugged her tightly, his pride and relief evident. "You did it," he whispered. "Your mother would be so proud." She smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks, feeling an overwhelming sense of love and connection. All the hours of practice, all the struggles, all the moments of doubt had led to this one moment of triumph and fulfillment. Later, as she walked home, the notes of her performance still ringing in her ears, she reflected on her journey. The competition had not been easy, and the fear she had felt was real. But she had faced it, relying on her determination, love, and the memory of her mother to guide her. She realized that success was not just about applause or recognition. It was about courage, perseverance, and the ability to stay true to oneself. That evening, she sat at the piano once more, this time without fear, without pressure. She played the piece again, not for anyone, not for competition, but for herself and for her mother. Every note carried emotion, every chord a memory. She felt a sense of peace, knowing that she had done something meaningful, something that connected her to her past and shaped her future. The turning point had arrived, and she had embraced it fully, ready to continue her journey with music guiding her every step of the way. The day of the performance arrived, and the auditorium buzzed with excitement. Parents, teachers, and students filled the seats, chatting and adjusting programs in their hands. Backstage, she paced quietly, holding her sheet music, her fingers brushing over the worn edges as if to find comfort. Her heart raced, and her stomach twisted in knots. She took deep breaths, trying to calm herself. She reminded herself of all the hours she had spent practicing, the mistakes she had corrected, the nights spent imagining her mother sitting beside her. Those thoughts gave her courage. When it was her turn, her name was called, and she walked onto the stage. The bright lights blinded her momentarily, and the audience appeared as a blur. She approached the piano and sat down, adjusting the bench carefully. The cool keys greeted her fingers, familiar and comforting. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the silence of the auditorium fill her with focus. Then she pressed the first note. The music began softly, delicate and careful. Each note carried the emotion she had felt during months of practice. The melody flowed through her fingers, as though her heart was speaking directly to the audience. She felt her mother's presence with her, guiding her hands, whispering encouragement. With every chord, she immersed herself deeper, letting the music tell the story she had been waiting to share. The middle section came, filled with rapid runs and complex passages. Her fingers moved with confidence, remembering the countless hours of repetition. Occasionally, a slight tremor appeared in her hands, but she ignored it, keeping her mind on the music. The audience listened in silence, drawn into the emotion she conveyed, forgetting that this was a young girl playing a challenging piece. They felt her dedication, her longing, and her love. As she reached the soft, emotional part of the piece, she slowed down, letting each note linger in the air. Her eyes glistened with tears, but she didn't stop. This was for her mother, and she could feel her presence with every note. The music became a bridge between the past and the present, a connection to the love she had lost but never forgotten. The room seemed to hold its breath, captivated by the depth of feeling in her performance. The final section arrived, powerful and expressive. She leaned into the keys, pouring every ounce of emotion and skill she had into the melody. Her fingers flew over the piano, precise yet full of life, capturing the energy and beauty she had always envisioned. The sound filled the auditorium, bouncing off the walls, touching every listener with its sincerity. She felt a sense of liberation, as though the music itself was lifting her, carrying her through fear and doubt. When the last note rang out and faded into silence, she sat there for a moment, catching her breath. The audience was still, a collective pause that felt like the world was holding its breath with her. Then, slowly, applause erupted, filling the room with warmth and appreciation. She looked up, blinking back tears, and saw the faces of people moved by her music. Some clapped vigorously, others smiled with admiration, and a few wiped away tears. The judges nodded approvingly, jotting down notes with genuine interest. They whispered to each other, impressed by her technical skill and the depth of emotion she had expressed. Backstage, her father beamed, his eyes shining with pride. He had witnessed the transformation, the months of dedication, and now he saw the culmination of her hard work and perseverance. Her classmates, some who had mocked her before, were quiet, their expressions a mix of surprise and newfound respect. Some approached her later, hesitant but sincere, complimenting her performance. "That was amazing," one whispered. "I didn't know you could play like that." She smiled politely, feeling a quiet satisfaction. She hadn't played for them, but it was a small reassurance that her efforts were seen. As she walked off the stage, her heart still racing, she felt a wave of emotions. Relief, joy, pride, and a deep sense of connection to her mother. The music had carried her through fear, and now she felt stronger, braver, more certain of her own abilities. The journey had not been easy, but the reward was greater than she had imagined. It wasn't just the applause or recognition. It was the fulfillment of a promise to herself and to the memory of her mother. Later that evening, she returned home and sat at the piano once more. The house was quiet, and she played the piece again, this time without pressure, without audience. Each note resonated with the satisfaction of accomplishment, with the love and memory of her mother. She closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her, feeling a connection that no one else could take away. The performance had been more than an event. It was a moment of triumph, of healing, and of self-discovery. She thought about the path that had brought her here. The long hours of practice, the mistakes, the doubt, and the teasing. Each challenge had shaped her, taught her patience, resilience, and the power of love and dedication. The applause was wonderful, but what mattered most was the journey, the transformation, and the bond she felt with her mother through the music. Her simple wish, once dismissed by others, had grown into something profound. She had not only played the piece but had poured her heart into it, creating an experience that was meaningful and unforgettable. She realized that the true reward was not recognition from others, but the knowledge that she had honored her mother and her own dedication. That feeling of pride and connection was hers to keep, a treasure that no one could mock or diminish. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, more opportunities to play, more moments of doubt. But she also knew that she had discovered a strength within herself that would guide her through anything. The piano was not just an instrument. It was a companion, a voice for her emotions, and a bridge to her past and future. That night, as she lay in bed, her fingers still tingling from the performance, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. Every note she had played was a step toward understanding herself, honoring her mother, and embracing her own potential. She fell asleep with a sense of peace, her heart full, knowing that the music she carried inside her was more powerful than any doubt or mockery she had faced. The next morning, she woke up with a quiet sense of accomplishment still lingering in her heart. The previous day's performance had been more than she had imagined, and the feeling of pride and connection to her mother stayed with her as she went about her day. Even the usual teasing at school seemed less harsh, as if the music she had played had changed the way people saw her. Some classmates whispered compliments, others looked on with respect, and she realized that their opinions mattered far less than her own satisfaction and the fulfillment she had found in her journey. Her father noticed a light in her eyes that morning, a brightness that had not been there before. He knew that the experience had been transformative for her. Over breakfast, he gently asked her about the performance, not wanting to pressure her but curious about her feelings. She described every detail, from the trembling of her fingers at the beginning to the way she had felt completely absorbed in the music during the final section. She spoke of the audience's reactions, the applause, and most importantly, the sense of peace and connection to her mother that had filled her heart. In the days that followed, she continued to play at home, not for competitions or recognition, but simply because the music brought her joy and comfort. The piano had become a place where she could express herself freely, where every note carried emotion and meaning. She explored new pieces, experimenting with melodies and harmonies, discovering her own style and voice. The journey that had started with a simple wish had grown into a lifelong love, a passion that would continue to guide her. School became a little easier, too. The classmates who had mocked her began to see her in a new light, recognizing the dedication and talent she possessed. Some even approached her to ask questions about her music, curious about the discipline and practice it required. She answered politely, never boasting, but always encouraging those who showed genuine interest. Her experience had taught her humility as well as confidence, and she wanted to share what she had learned without judgment. Her teacher continued to support her, offering guidance on more complex pieces and encouraging her to explore the emotional depth of music further. Each lesson became an opportunity to refine her skills and deepen her understanding. She listened carefully, practiced diligently, and gradually her confidence grew even stronger. Music was no longer just a way to honor her mother. It had become a language through which she could express herself, a tool for personal growth, and a source of endless joy. Evenings at home were filled with quiet moments of reflection and practice. Sometimes she would play slowly, savoring the sound of each note and imagining her mother listening, nodding, and smiling. Other times, she would play with energy and excitement, exploring new rhythms and melodies. The piano had become a companion, a friend that never judged, never laughed, never questioned. It was there for her through every emotion, every challenge, and every triumph. The local community began to notice her talent as well. Friends of her father and neighbors who had heard her playing began to comment on the beauty and depth of her music. Some suggested that she participate in more recitals or performances, not for competition, but to share her gift with others. She considered these invitations carefully, understanding that each performance was an opportunity to connect, to express, and to grow. One afternoon, she received a letter from the music competition organizers, acknowledging her performance and expressing admiration for her skill and dedication. They encouraged her to continue pursuing music and to share her talent with a wider audience. Reading the letter, she felt a swell of pride and happiness, not because of recognition, but because it reaffirmed that her hard work and love for music had meaning beyond herself. Despite the recognition and encouragement, she remained grounded. She knew that the journey was ongoing, that there would always be new challenges, pieces to learn, and emotions to express. She approached each day with the same quiet determination that had carried her through the months of practice, understanding that the path to mastery was a lifelong process. The music was a mirror of her own growth, reflecting her patience, resilience, and heart. Her peers at school slowly learned to respect dedication and passion, seeing that true commitment required more than casual effort or mocking others. She became an example not through boasting, but through quiet perseverance and the authenticity of her efforts. The music had spoken for her, and it had conveyed a message stronger than words ever could, that dedication, love, and resilience could create something truly beautiful. The memory of her mother remained at the center of her journey. Every note played, every piece learned, was a tribute to the love and encouragement she had received. She felt her mother's presence not as a shadow of loss, but as a guiding force that continued to inspire and support her. Music had become the bridge that connected the past and the present, the memory of her mother and her own unfolding story. As months passed, she continued to grow both as a musician and as a person. The piano taught her lessons beyond music: patience, empathy, focus, and the courage to face challenges with grace. She learned to celebrate small victories, to embrace mistakes as learning experiences, and to find joy in the process as much as in the outcome. These lessons carried over into other areas of her life, helping her navigate school, friendships, and personal challenges with confidence and understanding. One quiet evening, she played a new piece, one she had composed herself. The melody was gentle yet expressive, carrying the emotions she had felt over the months: love, longing, joy, and triumph. She played with her eyes closed, her fingers gliding over the keys as though they had become an extension of her heart. When the last note faded, she felt a sense of completion, a realization that her journey was not about a single performance or recognition, but about the continuous expression of her soul through music. Her simple wish, once mocked and dismissed, had grown into a lifelong journey of discovery, resilience, and love. She had learned that true success was not measured by applause or recognition, but by the fulfillment of a promise to oneself, the connection to what one values most, and the courage to pursue a passion despite doubt or fear. The piano had been her teacher, her companion, and her voice, guiding her through challenges and triumphs alike. As she looked toward the future, she felt a sense of optimism and purpose. Music would continue to be a part of her life, a source of joy, expression, and connection. She knew that there would be new challenges, new pieces to learn, and new experiences to embrace, but she was ready. The journey that had begun with a simple wish had transformed her in ways she could never have imagined, teaching her the power of love, perseverance, and the courage to follow one's heart.